Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors. Jones top. Another point fence into the slot. A shot is gone! Josh Perry. And double.
Left point long drive. Save Kinetic. What a stop by Matisse with the left pad. Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net. Denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in. Hofer into his net. He stops it. Hofer looking. Hofer firing toward the empty net. He scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from Aalborg, Denmark.
And incredibly cold Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode 123 for Thursday, December 22nd, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring a guide to putting snow chains on your tractor, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
As always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to talk about some news as well as dive in and discuss the goings-on of 8 teams around the AHL. We both watch a lot of AHL games and talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our YouTube feed or podcast channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's all the way at the bottom there, but it is down there. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms, like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes reading the Academy Awards shortlists. You've never even heard of half these movies. Don't kid yourself. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? And Sarah, we do have some league-wide news to talk about as some trades happened. And let's start with the 3-team trade, because that one was the more unsettling of the two, we'll go with. So 3-team trade here. And it was Michael Del Zotto, Danny O'Regan, and Giovanni Smith being traded. So Del Zotto is going to San Diego / Anaheim, and he's going from Charlotte. Danny O'Regan is going from Anaheim / San Diego to Grand Rapids. And then Giovanni Smith is going from Charlotte to Grand Rapids. So basically, Giovanni Smith to Grand Rapids, Del Zotto to San Diego, and then O'Regan to Charlotte. No, I screwed that up. Jesus. All right, so Del Zotto is going from Charlotte to San Diego. Danny O'Regan is going from San Diego to Grand Rapids. Giovanni Smith is going from Grand Rapids to Charlotte. There we go. I got it right. Yeah. This trade does not make a lot of sense to me for one of 3 teams here. I understand why O'Regan is asking out of San Diego, and we'll talk about the mess that San Diego is later in the episode. But I understand why he's like, nope, I've seen enough. Cut me loose. Going to Grand Rapids, a choice, but Grand Rapids, Danny O'Regan can't play goal, so that's not going to help them a whole ton. But he's very much an upgrade in their forward core over Giovanni Smith. I get why San Diego wanted Michael Del Zotto. They have basically one puck mover on the back end in Briard, and he is currently a liability on defense. And while Del Zotto's defensive ability is probably not much better, he's someone else they can put on the ice that can get the puck from A to B. So I understand the want there. Charlotte wanting Giovanni Smith is a choice.
Yeah.
Especially giving up someone that, I can see why another team gave up on Michael Del Zotto. There's a long history of teams wanting to give up on Michael Del Zotto because, he does not have the best reputation off the ice. I'm sure you can use the Google machine if you don't know what I'm talking about. But there is enough smoke out there that I tend to believe it when it's been like 4 teams that have been like, yeah,
we're done.
Yeah. Like, you don't hear things about guys being bad in the locker room, like escaping out into the media, basically ever. So the fact that there's been quite a few stories about it makes you think. But like Michael Del Zotto and Danny O'Regan on the ice at the AHL level have been very good as recently as last year. Both have been underperforming this year, but like Giovanni Smith's never really been that good.
No.
And like, he's not a goon, but he's like he's close-ish. Like, he's a bottom 6 grinder who can chip in 15, 20 points. Like, you can pick those guys up anywhere. You didn't have to trade a piece for them. Like, you could find those for future considerations and steak dinners and stuff. Like, that's I don't get this. I don't know what Charlotte's thinking there, especially because Charlotte is flying down the Atlantic Division fast here. So I don't know why they think this helps them, but okay. You got it. Congrats. Sarah, any overall thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I won't miss seeing Giovanni Smith on Grand Rapids beating up on, the Wolves 12 times a year. Like, that's bye. I mean, the only thing I can think of is like some sort of, how teams keep acquiring Ryan Reeves for some reason. Like, is it that sort of philosophy? Like, does Charlotte think they need that guy in their lineup? Maybe. I don't think they do. They probably already have one. It's but like, AHL.
Like, if you wanted that guy, you could go find that guy. Like,
someone would give him to you.
Yeah. Like, there are plenty of ECHL teams who have a dude that does exactly that job.
Yeah.
They could just be like, oh, okay, we'll go get Yannick Turcotte from, I think he's in Worcester or wherever. Go find that guy. That guy's a professional face puncher. Go get him. Like, that didn't have to cost you anything besides like a league min AHL deal.
Yeah.
But
it's super weird. And like you're talking about Del Zotto, and he has a track record behind him. So the fact that that Anaheim willingly reacquired him after having him previously, and then that's very curious, especially because he's going to be with the Gulls, which is largely children and people who are not good. And so you're like, we'll talk about that later. But so you're bringing this known quantity of questionableness into your locker room of your already struggling team. Like, he'll help you on the ice, maybe. It's
probably.
I feel like everyone just felt like they needed to do something, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah, well, Charlotte came up on the short end of the stick here. I don't think there's any question about that. Like,
no,
I don't get this one, but let's see. The other thing too is Del Zotto on an AHL only deal, or is he on a 2-way?
I think it's a 2-way.
Looking up right now. He is on a 2-way deal, so he could go and not just suffer in San Diego losing. He could suffer in Anaheim.
Yes. Yeah.
So I definitely see it from that perspective of he is another player, because if Anaheim loses another defenseman, who are they
have nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Oli Ulevi's already there. Austin Strand is terrible. Drew Hellison? Is that? Yeah.
A person?
So, Del Zotto is at least a veteran who's played in the NHL before that you could put in there, for whatever. But I guess that makes sense for them. And he's a puck mover at the AHL level, and they need more of those. And O'Regan should be useful, at least in Grand Rapids. He's been a good forward before. It's just a matter of, can he play a little more defense, because that's what Grand Rapids needs goaltending more than defense. But anyway, all right. I think that's enough on that trade. The other one that happened was one that at least you can squint at and kind of get. Rochester sends Oskari Laaksonen to Texas for Joseph Sacconi. And I feel like Laxinen, if my memory serves me correctly, last year in Rochester's playoff run was a healthy scratch for a couple of games because he's that big of a liability in his own end. And while I don't agree necessarily with that assessment that he's that big a liability in his own end, he's not great in it, but he can move the puck. He can create offense. Why Texas wants more of that when they already have guys like Thomas Harley in the lineup. Sure. But I can see why Rochester was like, we have this offensive guy that, maybe could be a second power play unit guy for you. But I get why they would want a more kind of balanced, more defensive minded guy in Joseph Ciccone because, well, defense and defending in zone and in transition has been a huge problem for Rochester dating back to last year. But they're getting better goaltending now, at least. So perhaps, a little boost in defense will raise all tides there. Any thoughts on at least a much more reasonable kind of 1-for-1?
Yeah, I mean this one, when it happened, you're like, oh, well, I get it. We'll talk a little bit about Rochester later, but they're already better defensively, better goaltending wise than they were last year. Maybe they're seeing this as, okay, well, a little bit more can't hurt. And so having a little more insurance, it's a trade that happened. It exists.
Yeah, let me see too. They're both, I think, right. Yeah, they're both right-handed defensemen. So it's not we needed another lefty or another righty or something like that. But yeah, it's one that makes a little more sense to me too. I don't know why Texas necessarily was super excited to ditch Ciccone. I mean, he's a little bit older, a little bit more reliable defensively, but they're not having offensive defenseman problems.
Yeah.
I mean, they do need more right-handed defensemen. They only have Laxinen and Petrovic, but because you traded 1-for-1 right-handed defenseman, you didn't really gain a guy there. But I suppose that's okay. You can play 2 lefties or 2 righties on your bottom pair. It's not ideal, but there are worse things. All right. I think that's enough on trades. Let's actually get into our teams that we're going to talk about here. As always, we start Atlantic to Pacific. We're going to start with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Sarah, tee us up.
All right. So this season, Alex Nylander, he's got 10 goals, 10 assists for 20 points in 24 games, including 7 points over his last 5 games. The model has him graded in the 87th percentile with a first-line forward grade. All that being said, do you think that finally Alex Nylander is ready for a return to the NHL?
I love the finally you added in there. It's been a while, but I would say yes, but also no, and we'll explain. In film from Wilkes-Barre Scranton, I've liked what I've seen from Nylander. The playmaking and puck skills have always been there. They've never gone away. They're high end. They translate very well to the faster paced and better executed game that is the NHL compared to the AHL. But Nylander's also shown he's still a shooter worth keeping an eye on. His release and accuracy are capable of beating some goalies from mid-range, even, ones with NHL pedigrees. The big question for Nylander has always been involvement, work ethic, especially when it comes to away from the puck or in the defensive zone. And in that aspect, I've seen a lot of improvements. He's a lot more engaged in the play in all 3 zones. I mean, he's never going to be the player that's, running in Leroy Jenkins to a board battle. But he's never going to be someone who's F1 and just throwing his body onto the puck carrier. But that's okay. He's still someone who's gotten a lot more engaged, especially defensively. I mean, Tuesday night in Toronto, he back-checked at full speed twice to chase down 2 odd-man rushes and helped break up the play on one of them. The other, he was trying to cover a pass. He got there in time, but didn't quite get the pass. But still, he was full head down, skating hard on both of them and didn't necessarily need to be. If he would have just kind of made a running man pose down the ice, that would have been fine. But no, he hustled to chase those guys down. And his off puck game in the offensive zone is improving. We're seeing him get more puck touches because he's putting himself in better places. He's taking a more active role. And we see that a lot of times, that more puck touches, you gain more confidence, you get better results. That gives you more puck touches. It's a vicious cycle, but one that plays in his favor. All that being said, I think he's a good candidate for a call-up under the right circumstances. And those circumstances, though, are what he's going to be asked to do in Pittsburgh. for all the glowing up of Nylander's improved effort, he's still not someone I'd be putting in fourth line minutes or PK time. He's someone who could fill in on like the Penguins' third line with Jeff Carter as his center, maybe rotate in on power play too. 14 minutes a night of that kind of third line scoring role, plus a little power play time alongside guys like Jeff Carter on that third line, maybe Brock McGinn. Those two guys who can kind of play in the areas and roles that Nylander's not well suited for, that kind of battling down low, playing F1 as a forechecker. That's something you see more from Carter and McGinn respectively. However, I think that's really unlikely despite Nylander looking like he's earned that opportunity, and I say that for two reasons. Reason number one, Mike Sullivan, like most NHL coaches, is incredibly risk averse and doesn't like to throw young, somewhat unproven players into depth roles or any role, really. It's why 32-year-old Chad Ruhwedel draws into the lineup at the bottom of, when they have an injury before Ty Smith, and why the bottom six features 0 players 22 or younger. And the ones that are there that are young are, by and large, 200-foot, defensively responsible kind of guys. Putting Nylander into a third-line scoring role with some power play time for 14-ish minutes a night is not an unreasonable thing, but it's also just not something Mike Sullivan or really a lot of NHL coaches do. For example, Drew O'Connor in his call-up this season played 10 minutes and 40 seconds or less in all 3 games. Puustinen in his call-ups was under 11 minutes. Philip Hallander played 11:01 and 8:55 in 2 games with Pittsburgh this season. The other reason I think Nylander sticks in Wilkes-Barre Scranton all this season is, unlike O'Connor or Hallander or Gruden or Legare, Nylander is eligible for waivers. So if he doesn't stick to the landing in Pittsburgh and is just kind of an injury fill-in guy, and they're not going to give him the runway to kind of explore the space and try and get back to the NHL, which I think is very unlikely, as we just talked about. Mm-hmm. He would have to pass through waivers in order to get reassigned to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And while it feels like every time someone gets put on waivers, we're all like, no, that guy's definitely going to get claimed. Like, there are some obvious ones in which we've seen coming, and it feels like it's happening more and more often as there are teams that are in injury spots that need just a healthy body that they could squint at and play at NHL minutes, or in some cases, they're in it to tank and blow it for Bedard, and a not that qualified NHL player in their lineup is actually more what they're looking for, especially if it's going to be cheap. I mean, look at the guys who've been claimed this season alone. Eli Tolvanen, Carson Kuhlman, Jason Magna, Magnus Hellberg twice, Tyson Yost, Rudolph Boussers, Nikolai Aubé-Kubel, Kiefer Bellows, Dryden Hunt, Lucas Sedlak, Jonas Johansson, Brett Leeson, Axel Jonsson Fjallby, Josh Mahura, Connor Ingram, and Jared Tenorti. That is just from this season alone. And a world in which the Ducks or Coyotes or Senator or Avalanche grab him because they're short on forwards and need just a 13th guy on the roster. And hey, he's played NHL games before and has shown some competency at it. Screw it. We'll throw a waiver claim in there and grab him. And if you're Pittsburgh, are you willing to roll the dice that you lose Nylander for nothing if you waive him back to Wilkes-Barre Scranton? I kind of doubt it. So for as much progress as we've seen from Nylander this season, as much as I believe he's earned a right to have a look, I think it's unlikely the Penguins decide to call him up unless they plan on giving him a real shot for that third line role. So like if Kasperi Kapanen, breaks his knee in like a flamingo way and is clearly not coming back, maybe you could see something like that happen where he's going to get an honest shot at making that role. But other than something like that, I think it's unlikely that they give him even a 2 or 3 game stint in Pittsburgh just because of what it would mean to wave him back down and potentially lose him. Because I think the organization likes him, but they saw what happened trying to wave down. Oh my God, what's his name? He plays for Calgary now. Giant guy.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of it. Radim Zahorna. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. I forgot to put him on the list because he was technically before the season started. But yeah, he got claimed. And even though they had a chance to claim him back, they didn't. So I don't know. But that's another one where I feel like Pittsburgh is too two not wanting to get weird with it to put Nylander up, and I think that's good for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He's been really good there, and I'm excited to see, if maybe out of camp next year he can make some more noise in Pittsburgh. Yeah. All right, I think we have more we could talk about with Wilkes-Barre Scranton, but I think that's a good place to leave it for right now. We got to move on to one of our other teams, and let's stick in the Atlantic Division and go with the Springfield Thunderbirds. Sarah, Springfield is plus 10 in goal differential in the first period. They're plus 2 in the second period, and minus 18 in the third. They lead the AHL in blown games after leading for 2 periods. In 5, they've blown 5 games where they were leading after 2 periods. What is happening in the third period in Springfield?
So nothing good, that is for sure. In their last 5 games, they have allowed 7 third period goals and scored just 1. Of those 5 games, they have won 2 of them. 1 went to overtime, and in that overtime game, they allowed a third period goal that ended up forcing overtime. It's not even that they're necessarily getting wildly outshot. There are some individual games where it's clear the other team's pressing a lot more. For example, there was a game against Syracuse where shots were 16-8 in favor of Syracuse, and the Crunch scored twice in that period. But if you look at it as a whole, you can't even say that they're necessarily getting outworked in the third. Shots for were 46, and shots against were 44. So that's not it. Looking at a few of those games where they allowed goals in the third period, the game against Syracuse, the first goal, they had the chance to clear and they didn't. Matthew Highmore just kind of did the classic, controller disconnected and just sort of stood there in the circle while play was happening around him, and Syracuse scored. The second goal against was an empty net goal. Syracuse knocked the pass down and just shot it in the empty net. Game against Bridgeport, there was a turnover. The pass missed the target and just went sailing right past him and went to the guy who scored the goal instead. Game against Grand Rapids, they lost the puck in the corner, and there was just a scrum at the net front of just basically every guy piled up on top of their poor goalie. And obviously they got scored on. But all of that said, when I watch these third periods for them, I'm not necessarily seeing anything out of the ordinary in their play. It's not like it's defensive breakdown after defensive breakdown. There's not a ton of odd man rushes against. There's not a lot of stupid things where I'm watching them being like, what are you doing? Why did you just do that? There's nothing glaring that's really standing out that makes me think that a disaster is coming, other than knowing this stat of them allowing 8,000 third period goals. That's not the real number, but close. If anything, maybe it's that they're allowing opposing players to clog up the crease a little too much. Like I said, the Grand Rapids goal happened because there's 3 Griffins right around the blue paint. Of course, someone is going to jam it in when all 3 of them are on top of your goalie. But more likely, I kind of wonder if this is something that speaks to just mental lapses, hockey IQ kind of issues. So not necessarily a full team issue, but individual players aren't pulling their weight for a full 60 minutes. Like Highmore on that Syracuse goal, literally just standing there in the circle. He makes a couple of half-hearted, stick swipes one of those. But your average beer league player would have had a better defensive stick. He's just standing there, so I would have liked to see better awareness from him on that play. And, if that's something that is chronic among generally the players, in general, that could speak to what's happening there of just you're checking out by the end of the third period, or you're playing for yourself and not your teammates kind of thing. It feels too easy to say that this is just sheer dumb luck that they're getting outscored by that much in the third period, but maybe it is. The good news is that if we've learned anything doing this show, it's that sometimes sheer dumb luck will correct itself eventually. It's not like their defensive structure has fallen apart or they're suddenly taking 6 penalties in a period or something. At least I don't think they are. That's not what I saw, but you never know. But because it doesn't seem like a systems issue, it seems like something that should even out. When we look at the numbers, their estimated PDO is 98.74. That is very low. They should be a little higher. Their even strength shooting is at 6.2%. Even strength goals per game, 1.52. That's the lowest in the league. And guys who are usually contributing on the score sheet aren't. Matthew Highmore, when he's not standing around doing nothing, right now he's shooting at 9.5. Usually he's in the high teens. Martin Firk is at 8.9. He's usually between 13 and 20% because he's Martin Firk. They have the number 3 power play in their division. That's helping power them a little bit, but Martin Firk still only has 5 goals. We talked about him at the beginning of the season, and I was like, well, if he continues not scoring, I'm going to get worried. I'm starting to get worried about what's going on with poor Martin Firk here. But I still feel like this is another team that's maybe better than what their record shows. They've got 25 points. They're 7th of 8 in the Atlantic. They've only won 3 of their last 10, but I think that it also is going to speak to how rough it's going to be for most of these teams in the Eastern Conference. Hershey and Providence are basically running away with 1 and 2, but the margin of differences in points for the bottom teams is pretty slim. Wilkes-Barre Scranton has 30 points. They're the number 4 spot. Hartford's number 8 with 23 points. So that is not a big difference between number 4 and number 8. So they're part of their problem is just where they play. You could plunk them in like the Central Division and maybe things will look different, but it's weird. It's very weird, I think, is my official judgment on Springfield.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the standings right now. I mean, they have a game. They're a game behind everyone else in the division. Well, 5 in the 5 seed right now is Lehigh Valley at 27 points in 26 games. Charlotte, same record, like exact same record. Jeez. And Springfield has 1 more game played, but it's 2 points behind. So like to sneak into that number 6 seed there is not an unrealistic thing. So, and by and large, the only goal of the regular season is just to make the playoffs. Right. Once you're in, like, you want to get those bye weeks. That's nice. But like as long as you're sneaking in, anything can happen. Yeah. Hockey's stupid like that. So I don't think they're definitely out of it. Whereas like, I don't think Hartford is either. We've talked about Hartford a bunch of like, and they've done what we said, but for Springfield, the needing the power play that badly to succeed is definitely something that's a little concerning. But I remember when I saw that third period goal differential and looked how many games they'd blown after leading for over 2 periods. It's just like, Jesus. Yeah. 4-1 in Syracuse. Like that's a spirit killer. All right. I think that's a good place to leave it there. Let's go north and talk about the Rochester Americans. Sarah, the last time we talked about Rochester, we were still thinking that their performance was a mirage and that they kind of had to come back down to earth eventually. They've continued their hot streak, though, and are sitting at number 2 in the North Division. They've won 6 of their last 10 despite having mediocre special teams and like okayish goaltending. And only 1 player on the team with more than 20 points. How is Rochester keeping this up?
So we just talked about Springfield and their absolute garbage luck, right? So Rochester seems to be getting the opposite side of that coin. Their estimated PDO right now is 101.37, so they're a little higher maybe than you think that they should be. But one of the things that, is somehow like they're doing well, but I don't know how. Like their power play drop-off has been alarming, to say the least. The last time we talked about them, the power play was number 4 in the league for the Rochester Americans. It has plummeted. Right now, it is 21st. So that is a huge drop-off. They're 1 for 24 over the last 6 games. And I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Yes, exactly. I don't like what I'm seeing from them on the power play. So I watched their power plays against in their last game against Charlotte. There were 2 power plays that I focused on. The first one, they allowed 2 shorthanded rushes the other way, including 1 extended possession sequence for Charlotte. They had very little actual sustained pressure in their offensive zone. Basically, they do the thing where they just pass it around in a circle once, Charlotte picks it off or picks up a rebound, and they go the other way. The second power play, at one point, 3 of the 5 players wind up behind the net. Charlotte wins the puck battle, and play goes the other way. I actually timed it. I pulled out my phone and the stopwatch on my phone. Very unscientific. I was a little lazy with press start or stop, but about 50 seconds of time total, and that might be generous. About 50 seconds they were actually in the offensive zone for Rochester, and a lot of that was just kind of getting set up, not even a threat. A good percentage of the time in the zone was in puck battles along the boards. It wasn't even in actively trying to make a goal happen. There's not a lot of urgency in the power play. There's not a lot of movement. They get the puck moving, So it's great for the people in the stands who want to yell shoot the whole time, but they're not getting bodies moving around. If you're just passing the puck in a circle, great. How about something else? That's not working for them. So everything is very stationary. It's easy for opposing teams to anticipate what's going to happen, easy for them to pick off passes, and real easy for them to just waste a whole load of time in the corners. I watch a very bad power play on a regular basis with the Chicago Wolves. Even they don't spend so much time just stuck in the corner doing nothing. It was bizarre. So that, the fact that Rochester is winning games despite this hot mess is pretty impressive. They've also used 4 different goaltenders so far. The best one stats-wise is Malcolm Subban. He's got a 2.82 goals against average, 910 save percentage. He doesn't quite meet the mark that the league sets of 480 minutes for a qualified goaltender. But if he did, that would put him 24th out of 50 goaltenders in terms of goals against average, 18th for save percentage. So, not great, not horrible. That said, their goaltending is better than last year. And maybe more importantly, the team defense in front of them is better than last year. So, Sean, you posted a chart on Twitter looking at goaltending last year versus this year for Rochester.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the chart,
this is last year. Actually, here, let me pull up the picture version because that is live in the background and that doesn't look as good. I don't know why Tableau, for some reason, just does not like that graph as much.
Just wants to make things hard.
Yeah. So this is this year. This is still not great. Can I make this bigger? There we go.
Look at that.
All right.
Beautiful.
So a lot of it you see so if you're not familiar with my graphs, the solid gray lines are averages. So this would be the average of defensive environment rating and the average of goals saved above average per 60. Shockingly, that's directly at 0. That's what it's supposed to be. And the dotted lines are one standard deviation outside of that. So 1 above, 1 below, 1 above, 1 below. So ideally, you want your goaltender to be here in this upper portion, the upper right, which says easy work, good results. That's where, pucks, you see pucks clearly. Your defense isn't making a lot of mistakes. And you see, Hershey, Texas, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Providence, Ontario, up in that neighborhood. Whereas in the hard work but good results, you see a fragment here that's Magnus Hellberg because he played 2 games. But you see here's Kochekov, here's Lucas Dostal, here's, I believe, Oliver Rodrigue, all of these guys who don't have it so easy but are still performing well, and that's what makes it impressive. But last season, let's see if I can pull up the last season graph here for the Rochester Americans. Oh, I have to pull it up this way because I already erased it and put something else in. Fun times. Where are you? But yeah, last season, the goaltending was not spectacular for Rochester. And a lot of it came from kind of the run and gun style that they played, where it was a lot of, we're going to basically trade chances with you and we're going to look to win, 6-5 as opposed to by a more reasonable score. All right. This is definitely last year's. Why does it look weird? No, that's right. Okay. It looks strange to me for a second there. It looks like this. This is Rochester. So you could see last year, way on the outside for defensive environment. But still, Aaron Dell battled at least respectably last year in a not great place. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen less so. But it was not easy work that they had to do. A lot of the comparables that they had, in those were, Chet Greaves. Let's see. Let's see. Toronto is over there too. The Marlies, not a great defensive environment last year. So that change year to year has definitely been huge for Rochester.
Yeah, and when you look at that chart, it's another one where you're ooh, the whole axis that way just had to shift because of these really bad teams over here. You want to be, like you said, in that top right corner. Most of the teams were kind of clustered off to the right side of that sheet in general. Rochester off to the left, better than those teams in the way bottom corner, like the Barracuda and the Roadrunners, who were just awful all around. But but they're trending more towards the middle, which is good. It means that the team in front of in general, the team is doing better. Still not great, but not as horrific as last season. And so that means that they're correcting themselves, which is good. You want to see them trending that way. Also, they're playing in a lot more close games now than they were in the beginning of the season. So far in December, they had 7 games. 3 of them were 1-goal games, 2 of which went to overtime. They had a 5-2 loss to Utica, which would have been 3-2 without Utica just going ham and scoring 2 empty net goals at the end of the game for fun. And they've only really had 1 blowout loss, which is a 5-2-1 loss to Syracuse. So, they're hanging in there. They're winning a lot of 4-3 games or, being on the losing side of that. One thing that I thought was interesting is there's definitely scoring by committee. So fellow Penn State alum, Brandon Biro, he leads the team with 23 points in 19 games. That puts him 40th in the league. So good for him in terms of leading Rochester, but, he's not up there with the elite, top 20, 25 guys in the league. Rochester has used 30 different players this season, in terms of skaters. Only 2 of them have failed to register a point. They have 21 different players with goals. I looked at players who have played at least 15 games. 19 guys meet that mark. Of them, only 1 player, defenseman Matt Bartowski, has only 1 goal. Everyone else has at least 2 or more. So they don't necessarily have the elite goal scoring that other teams have, but they found a way to be a team that's better than the sum of their parts, which I think is kind of the story on Rochester is, they're probably not that good, but they're getting it done. And for Rochester, ride that wave as long as you can.
I will say one thing that sticks out to me is in training camp, Seth Appert was quoted as saying, we're not going to have to worry about talent this year. And I just remember seeing that you weren't going to have Peterka or Quinn or Krebs. And it's just you sure about that? I understand You're getting some younger kids, but this is 19-year-olds in the AHL. They don't work the way that Quinner or JJ did last year. You're not getting that. And it's one of those moments now where I'm looking back and I'm would you like to amend that quote?
Right. Do you define talent differently, maybe?
Yeah, I think he's a good coach, and I'm not trying to rip him too much here, but that very much felt like a coach trying to pump the tires of his team and being real in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's again why I don't feel like paying attention to player or team interviews in some of those scenarios is worth it, because they're always going to, coaches are always going to be no, every player that's ever been on this team has been 100% useful. And that's just not true.
Right.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave it. Let's stick in the North Division and head upwards to the B. Let's go to Belleville. Sarah, team me up here.
All right. So not a lot of good things going on for Belleville recently either. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games. They're on a 3-game losing streak right now. Their net power play in that 3-game losing streak, it's a big fat 0. They have given up 2 shorthanded goals. The net PK is 71.4%, but by far the biggest problem, though, seems to be the 16 goals they've allowed over those just 3 games. Belleville has simply not been able to keep pucks out of their net. So is this defense, is it goaltending, or is it just more real bad luck?
The answer you're looking for is yes. It is all of those things. The bad luck parts we can't really do anything about bad bounces that lead to goals happens to the best of them. In those 16, I count 2 clearly bad luck goals. One additional one that you could kind of a little bit of bad luck mixed with some bad defense. But the 2 clear bad luck goals, one against the Moose that was a rebound off the back wall, just point shot goes wide, bounces right off the back wall, goes right to one of the Moose players, puts in an empty net. Nothing you can do about that. That's just bad luck. There was another one against Laval where Max Winnett poke checks a puck off a stick off Gabriel Bork behind the net, and it takes a weird bounce that goes to the far side of the goal, and Condada's just right there, far post, and tucks it in. That's a crappy bounce. Nothing you can do about that. Mama said there would be days like this. So there's no sense to dwell on those 2. That aside, the defense has definitely been, in my opinion, much more to blame for goals against recently than goaltending. To be fair to them, Belleville is third in starting roster games lost in the AHL and sixth in value loss. Jacob Bernard Docker, Roby Yarventy, Victor Lawden, Dylan Hetherington, all missed time for one reason or another so far this year, whether it's injury or call-up or yes. And that's going to cause more defensive breakdowns as you're forced to move guys up the depth chart and backfill with the Kyle Betts and Alex Brettons of the world. And they have not performed admirably in those roles, to say the least. I mean, Alex Belzile was literally standing on an island at the net front for one of the goals he scored when they played Laval, I think a week or so ago. You saw a lot of passes getting across Royal Road for goals. And that's not to say that the goaltending has been spectacular. To start, Antoine Bibeau has never been a beacon of consistency in nets. When he's on, he's solid. And when he's off, it can get very ugly quickly. And we've seen a couple of those. Mads Sugard is young, so there's hope that he can iron out those consistency problems, but he hasn't been reliable night in and night out in his somewhat short AHL career thus far. He's been late to reads. He struggled to track the puck a bit recently. He's not been the best with technical skills as a goalie. He relies more on size and puck tracking, and he hasn't been tracking the puck that well. Bibeau has been kind of hit or miss, but has also made some very questionable decisions, like to try and win a foot race against Anthony Richard to a puck at the top of the circles. Sarah, I'm pretty sure you didn't see that game, but I'm pretty sure just from that description, you can tell what happened there.
No, that's a horrible idea. Why would you do that?
Yeah, as soon as I saw him coming out, where the puck kind of stopped and how far out it was, and him coming out, I'm like, you've misjudged this very badly. But both the defense and the goaltending are at fault here. But I think I put 75% of the blame on the defense in front. Most of the scoring chances that are getting through are dangerous ones and ones that the defense needs to clean up. Yes, they're not the most talented bunch. And to be honest, even at full strength, it's not great. But staying engaged off puck, scanning over your shoulder, or simply getting transition started quickly off a dump-in, that doesn't require you to be Nick Lindstrom. It's being a professional, dedicating yourself to details in your own ends, plus work ethic. That's what separates a lot of guys from their peers as defensive stalwarts. It's paying attention to small things, knowing that every piece matters, where your stick is, how engaged you are, who's over your shoulder, that kind of thing. That's what separates a lot of guys who are, middle to lower tier defensive players from the guys who are a lot better. Like, I always think of Mark Stone in the NHL. Mark Stone is a terrible skater. Like, his skating genuinely pains me to watch. And he's one of the most defensively apt forwards in the NHL because he knows what he's supposed to do and he works his ass off to get that crappy skating to get him to where he needs to be. Same is true with guys like Pavel Datsyuk. Datsyuk was a smooth skater, but he didn't have burst. He wasn't super fast. But a lot of it was just, work ethic and fighting and making sure that he was always in the right spot. That doesn't take, supreme talent. It just takes, video review and details and the desire to go and get it done. Belleville doesn't have enough of those guys right now, and that's showing up on the scoreboard in a bad way.
So real quick here, though, what do you say the outlook is for Belleville right now? Do you think they're a contender? I think I know what you're going to say. Do you think a playoff team, a maybe playoff team, cellar dweller? What's up?
That's tough. The North Division feels so wide open behind Toronto, and at some point I have to imagine Toronto's injuries and call-ups and, games lost comes to finally drag them down to the depths of everyone else in the North Division. But I think Rochester and Syracuse are decent-ish. I think Syracuse is a lot better than their record. Rochester maybe a little more so. But that grouping behind those three, Cleveland, Utica, Belleville, and Laval, you could tell me, you could send future me from April to right now. And if I asked you how how those four teams finish in the standings, any order you tell me right now, I could see happening. Cleveland finally, succumbed to 855 goaltending and they blew, 12 out of their last 15 games of the season. Yeah, that seems inevitable. Utica, never really managed to sustain push and kept kind of just floating around, win 2, lose 3, and never got it going. Sure, okay, I can see that. Laval Caden Premu basically died, and Joe Verbatic, never really did a good job. Okay, that sounds legit. Belleville, the guys they got back from injury just weren't enough, and despite Troy Mann's best efforts, they couldn't, scrape together enough ugly wins. Yeah, I believe that. On the other side, it's like, Cleveland finally got goaltending that at least looked like 900 goaltending. Utica finally got Alex Holtz for more than a handful of games at a time. Belleville got healthy and decided that maybe it didn't need to play ECHLers on defense. And Laval finally figured out how to defend transition. Sure. All of those seem legitimate. Like, they could all happen. They're not a contender or a firm playoff team as it stands in my mind right now. But I think they're going to be in the fight for that last spot in the North. But I'd be shocked if they were more than that, given what their blue line looks like, even at full strength. But I think, last 2 weeks of the season, we're still going to see all four of those Cleveland, Utica, Belleville, Laval group in there fighting for, 3 points or something like that to close the season for a playoff spot. So I think they're on the playoff bubble in the North, but it would shock me if they were more too far above or too far below.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to Chicago, Texas, Tucson, and San Diego. This is going to be one fun team and three not fun teams to talk about. Yeah. If you're just here for the Eastern Conference and this is your jumping off point, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, we are back from break. We are headed over to the Western Conference, and not a lot of fun is going to be discussed here. We have 4 teams on the docket, and 3 of them are not doing so great. Let's start that off with your reigning, defending Calder Cup champions, the Chicago Wolves. Sarah, the Wolves may not be dead last in the AHL standings. That honor belongs to another team we're going to talk about today, but they've been struggling all season long. They won back-to-back games this past weekend for the first time since the end of October, but that doesn't mean their troubles are over. Sarah, what do Wolves fans have to look forward to, despite the fact that this team is struggling and looks very likely to be continuing to struggle for most of the season?
Yeah, well, speak about troubles not being over. If you thought that win streak was going to translate into more wins, it didn't. While we were recording the show, they played the Admirals and lost 5-2. It's the start of a 3-3. So, not looking forward to what's going to happen. The best thing that could happen to the Wolves this week is that if you don't know, the Midwest is going to get slammed with snow and weather. The best thing that could happen to the Wolves is these next 2 games get postponed. So they just don't have to play them. But there are some things that are going well for them. Those 2 games that they won this past weekend, if you watch those games, it was the Wolves at their best, and you could see what they could do if they could maintain that consistently, and they can't, and that's the problem. There are some bright spots, though. One of them, I would say, is Jamison Rees. I wouldn't say at all that he's NHL ready yet, but he's a guy who has the work ethic, the physicality. He has the right frame of mind to make it to that next level. And I'm convinced that it's not going to be long until he is annoying opponents in the NHL on a regular basis. He knows what his role is. He knows that his role is aggravating bottom 6 pest in the NHL. That is what he will be. And he will be good at it. He is very annoying to play against. The Wolves aren't an overly physical team. There's a lot of younger guys who need to put on weight and muscle to really be successful at this level. Reese is one of the only guys out there who's reliably every night using his body to make plays. He is the guy who is always slamming into the corners to try to get pucks, hitting guy, the classic take a hit to make a play guy. That is Jamison Rees. He leads the Wolves with 20 points in 23 games. He just scored a really cool shorthanded goal on a breakaway. So he at least is providing a lot of fun to watch and is making the most of his time with basically top 6 minutes on the Wolves. So he has been pretty delightful. Also for the Wolves, Ryan Suzuki is finally back in the lineup. They're still kind of managing his minutes a little bit. He was out tonight. They're not really playing him in back-to-backs, but he has looked solid in what he's gotten into. The last game that he played was April 16th, 2022. So he had about 8 months or so off from playing. And he himself admits that it's been a long road to get back here, that he still has work to do to be able to contribute every night. But he has 3 points in 3 games, not counting this game that just wrapped up. Well, he didn't play in that game anyway, so it doesn't really matter. He had the first 2-goal game of his career, which was also the second multi-point game. In that game, one came in off of a rebound, and one was pretty spectacular. He picks up a loose puck in the neutral zone, zooms the other way, goes one-on-one against the goalie and scores. So, if this is Ryan Suzuki just coming off of this really long layoff and still kind of working to get back in the lineup, you can see the promise for what he can be when he's fully healthy and helping out this lineup. He's a guy who's better defensively than maybe he's been given credit for, and he's working on expanding that part of his game. He knows that that's something that he needs to work on. He knows it's something that is going to be important for him. And so you see him blocking shots. You see him, also not being afraid to be physical, despite his, injury history, bizarre injuries, concussions, all that stuff. He's still, working to fill that 200-foot player role. And he helps give the Wolves more options down the middle. They're pretty thin when it comes to centers they can rely on. And he so far has been looking pretty good. One thing that's not great, among many things that aren't great, the power play is incredibly bad. They just had a stretch of 5 games without a power play goal. They were 0 for 17 over that span. Unlike we talked earlier about, which was it, Rochester, I think, that just kept allowing the teams to go the other way. You're not even seeing that. You're not even seeing the Wolves get stuck in the corner. They just don't have the puck. They're constantly spending the whole power play regrouping to try to get back into the zone. There's not even time for fans to yell shoot because they've lost the puck before they can even think about doing anything with it. So it's they get a power play and you're like, all right, let's just fast forward the next 2 minutes. They just can't do anything with it. In terms of puck possession, also just real bad. Only 6 of 23 games have they outshot their opponent. 11 games they have been outshot by double digits. I think there's one game that they were outshot by 22 or something. Just really offensively big numbers. They had a 6-game streak of being outshot by the opponent. Last year, if you watched the Wolves, they were definitely dominant, but you saw them struggle in the neutral zone at times. There were a ton of odd man rushes against, but they had the goaltending to bail them out. When some guy from Cleveland goes zooming the other way, they had Alex Lyon, they had Kochakov there, and they didn't really matter. They stopped the puck. This year, it's not even that. It's just they don't even have the puck. There's not odd man rushes because the Wolves don't have the puck to give it up to the other guy to go the other way. When the Wolves do have the puck, they're pushed to the outside. They're not taking dangerous shots. They're not forcing goalies to make big saves. I'm not seeing a lot of heroics from, opposing goalies like you did with last year's squad, where a guy had to be perfect to shut down someone like Andrew Podorowski or a Stefan Nason. This year, a lot of stuff is going right into the chest, is going into the glove, and they don't even have anyone positioned really for rebounds. So, you make a shot, it goes off the pad, no one's there. And so there's a lot of missed opportunities that are contributing to the Wolves not being able to maintain that possession, because instead of them picking up the puck, the other team picks it up, goes the other way. So there are some bright spots. I think that Ryan Suzuki getting the lineup is really good. Just for him as a person, to see him healthy and back on the ice is good and fun. And he could, if fully healthy, at least have a good season for himself. But it's going to be a long, long rest of the year in Chicago.
Yeah. I I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall in Chicago a little bit early in the season when it's like, oh yeah, Kochakov's gone and he's not going to be back for a while. Jack Drury went up, and then it's like, oh yeah, this team is missing, a lot of what carried the mail last year. And as good as Jamison Reese has been, and interesting as he's been, he can't do it by himself.
Right. Yeah.
But getting guys back, getting guys healthy, like when Kochakov comes back, because I'm assuming at some point that Freddie Anderson gets healthy. I keep seeing updates on him. It's like, oh, he's starting to
He's fine, yeah.
He's going to be back any day now. And I feel like the
Mhm.
skeleton Titanic meme where it's like, yep, any day now they're gonna.
Yes. Well, what will happen, because this is what happens, is Freddie Anderson will come back and Antti Ranta will immediately get hurt again. And so Kochakov will stay there.
You bite your tongue, Sarah. Bite your tongue.
I have followed Antti Ranta's career for so long, and it's what all the best in the world to him, but I guarantee he's going to get hurt again.
All right.
It's rough.
I think that's a good place to leave it for Chicago. They have suffered enough. Let us at least talk about one fun team in the Western Conference, the Texas Stars.
All right. So unlike Chicago, a lot is going right for the Stars right now. They are second in the AHL in goal differential they're at a plus 27. They are first in shot differential, fifth in the AHL in points percentage, third in goals per game, sixth in goals against per game, tied for fifth in first goal scored percentage. So that's all real good. The power play, however, is 20th in the AHL. This is especially weird as the Barbershop has opened a Cedar Park location. So, Sean, what is going on with their power play?
First, to be fair, Texas is 20th in raw power play percentage. They are 11th in net power play percentage, as they're one of just 4 AHL teams that haven't let up a shorthanded goal this season. As an aside here, Sarah, I will donate $50 of my own money to a charity of your choosing if you can name the other 3.
Oh, God. Let's pick Providence, Hershey. Let's go. Like, who the heck else is good? I'm running out of good teams. Let's go with, what are they? Colorado, just for fun. It's probably wrong.
All right. I will give you 2 more guesses. Colorado is correct. They are one of them.
Wow, that was the one I was least sure about. 2 more guesses. I bet it's like stupid teams then. Let's go. Oh, who's like good and boring defensively? So many boring teams. Let's go. I know this is definitely not right. Milwaukee and heck, let's just say Charlotte for fun.
So we were looking for Bridgeport, Manitoba, and Colorado.
All right. Well, I got one.
In terms of boring defensive teams, I felt like you were going to say Manitoba, like you wanted to. You got the colors.
It was trying. It was trying to come out.
All right. So back on topic here. You are correct that having Riley Barber on the roster and a team that otherwise isn't hurting for offense should be better on the power play. And let's not undersell the Barbershop here. Here are the league-wide rankings by power play goals for Barber in the last 5 seasons. 2021-22, tied for second with 15 power play goals. 2021, tied for first with 8 power play goals. Remember, shortened, weird year. 1920, tied for 58th with 5 power play goals. We'll call that the Joel Bouchard didn't like me here. 2018-19, tied for 8th in the AHL with 13 power play goals, and 17-18 tied for 15th with 10 power play goals. So aside from that one season where he very clearly and very well documentedly did not get along with Joel Bouchard in Laval, he's been a power play goal scoring stud. And while he's doing fine this year, he's on pace for 13 power play goals. I feel like the Stars could get more out of him and definitely more out of their power play. To start, the Barbershop is the right circle. Instead of cranking one-timers OV style or name a guy who scores on the power play in the NHL, that's how they do it. It's pretty much, Royal Road passes to a face-off dot where they're standing locked and loaded to, rifle the puck into the net. That's not what Barber does. Barber prefers his strong side wing and likes to work downhill. So he stays in that shadow of the blue line. He'll catch a pass up there and then he'll just attack downhill. And that's where he scores, like from the blue line, building up speed, just ripping a shot at like the middle, just past the top of the circle on the right side. That's the Barbershop. And that's how he scored the majority of his power play goals in the AHL across teams. The Stars, though, run a rather odd-looking power play. So they do use the 1-3-1, but not in totality and kind of a strange way. So as we can see here, we're going to bring up some pictures here. So if you're usually a podcast listener, this might be a good opportunity to find our YouTube channel. But this is, as you can see, a somewhat usual 1-3-1 setup. You have your one guy at the top of the point here, and what's supposed to be 1, 2, 3. But we talked about, like, this is Riley Barber here, and he likes to say this close because he likes this runway that he can go shoot on. But this is still a lot of space here that's just kind of hanging out. And that's unusual because most teams would try to utilize that for passes across Royal Road here, or, passes into this bumper spot. But that's not what Texas does. Texas also likes to use a weird kind of overload scheme that looks like this, is the best way I can describe it, where there's basically no one in the middle here. And it's just empty space. And they keep doing it. They come back to this formation a lot. So it makes me think that this is an intentional coaching choice because of the frequency in which they're in. Looks like this, where there's a lot of guys in the perimeter and sometimes one or no guys at the front of the net. And that's unusual. Teams don't do that. And what Texas seems to be trying to do here is basically drawing players out from their comfort zone, defending the slot here, and then creating backdoor plays with it. And they've had some success with it, but it's all very static in the way that they do it. And what that means is there isn't a lot of player movement. They don't have a lot of moving players either with the puck or off the puck. And that's important because as a penalty killer, you have to watch not just the puck carrier and see where he's looking and what he's doing, but you also have to make sure you're aware of who's behind you and what that passing lane to that player that you're responsible for is. So if the puck carrier is moving, I have to move with him. But if the player behind me is moving too, I now have to be doing my head on a swivel, trying to make sure I'm in that lane across two moving endpoints. Whereas if one of them isn't moving, I don't have to look at him at all if he's not going to move. I can just focus on the guy with the puck and then shift according to that. I don't have to focus on both sides. So the fact that the Stars don't move around a lot, you don't see a lot of player movement, especially in that kind of wide overload look, it makes it easier to defend because I don't have to be, I don't have the problem of both endpoints move and I have to be in the middle of them. Texas doesn't do that, doesn't have that player movement a lot. Even in that traditional kind of more 1-3-1 look, they still don't have a lot of player movement, a lot of interchanging. It's very static. And I think that's hurting their power play. Their power play units are also kind of oddly structured based on the personnel that they choose. The first unit, by and large, the past couple games has been Harley, Bork, Peterson, Damiani, and either Gleason or Blumel. The second unit has been Butcher, Studenich, Barber, McKenzie, and either Blumel or Caro. And I like that's okay. It's not horribly wrong. It's not like they're, putting some, fourth line junk player out there on the power play. Like those are roughly the people I would want on both power play units. But I would structure it more like this. I'd have power play 1 be Harley, Caro, Damiani, Barber, and McKenzie. And power play 2 be Butcher, Studenich, Blumel, Bork, and Peterson, with Gleason maybe mixing in is necessary. This way, it feels like that first unit has max firepower, whereas I feel like putting Barber with kind of the second group is a mistake. He's clearly your most potent power play weapon, and you can leave him in that kind of runway spot that he likes. Put Damiani on the other wall, McKenzie obviously at the net front, and then Caro is the bumper with Harley on top. I think that works really well. I would also either fully embrace whatever they're doing with that kind of spread concept or scrap it completely. Because they're kind of half mixing it in, and it doesn't seem like they have it all fully formed as to how it's supposed to work and what they're looking for. And that's making them kind of half-ass both sides of it, and that's not working. So either I would spend, the holiday break sending guys, video film of what you want to talk about and what you're trying to do with these looks and go fully into that, or I'd scrap it and go back to a traditional 1-3-1 and work it the way most other teams do. Get busy making your thing work, or get busy scrapping it and going back to the drawing board. Sticking here in between with this just feels like it's wasting time. And there's nothing wrong with the way that they do zone entries either. They use the double drop play, which is, if you're going to complain about it, build me a more effective entry zone play. I'm all ears. But they mostly stick to that, and it works pretty well for them. They haven't had too many struggles getting into the zone. It's once they get set up and they start doing kind of this weird, very static like hybrid where they're half 1-3-1 that it seems like it's not working for them. All in all, the power play obviously isn't broken here, but some choices the Stars have made on it are odd and ones that I think either clearly handicap their effectiveness or are choices that they haven't quite fully fleshed out yet, and their inability to commit to it is just kicking them down where they shouldn't be.
I mean, as long as I don't have to see 8,000 more Riley Barber goals against the Wolves this year, they can do whatever they want. He scores so many goals.
I can't promise you that.
It'll probably happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking about trying to make a barbershop t-shirt where we have that barbershop logo on like a green t-shirt, and I don't know, half of our proceeds go to like a Texas-based charity or something like that. So we'll see about that later down the road. I'm still fighting with our merch store. It works, but I'm not thrilled with it. But there are more important things. Let's move on here. Let's go to the best coast, the West Coast, although certainly not the best coast in this episode. Let's start with the sunnier looking of the two teams we're going to talk about in the Pacific Division, the Tucson Roadrunners. Sarah, they're not quite at the bottom of the standings as maybe some would have predicted, but they put together some solid performances lately, including a 9-4 win over the San Diego Gulls, which we will talk about the other side of. Well, they're probably going to spend the season in that kind of middle to lower part of the Pacific Division standings where everyone's kind of fungible and squishy. What is helping keeping Tucson go at this point in the season?
So the last time we talked about Tucson, a lot of the things that we talked about then are still continuing to hold true for the Roadrunners today. So last time we talked about them, we checked in on Michael Carcone, who is putting up some uncharacteristically high numbers for him. That trend has continued for the veteran forward, and as of right now, he's actually leading the league in scoring. Totally normal. He has 15 goals, 24 assists for 39 points in 25 games. That puts him just 2 points away from tying his career high, which was set last season with 41 points in 48 games. How is he doing it? Power play time. Simple as that. 9 of his 15 goals, 12 of his 24 assists have come on the advantage. 9 power play goals is a new career high for him. And we're not even halfway through the season. This week against Coachella Valley, 2 goals, both on the power play, both from basically his equivalent of the Obi spot. He had 1 assist where he passed cross ice from that spot, and the puck just sort of found its way in the back of the net. Earlier this month, he had a hat trick also against Coachella Valley. 2 of those 3 goals were power play goals. All 3 of them, even the even strength goal, were from that spot. So much like no one, Alex Ovechkin has 800 some goals, and yet somehow people are still like, wow, he scored from there. How'd he do it? Michael Carcone is going to go and score from there, and yet somehow he is still scoring goals.
Fun fact. Yes. That spot has a name. We have a name for that spot.
Yes.
Carcone Island.
Love it. Official. It is official. Put it in the books. Carcone Island. Big fan. So he hasn't necessarily turned over a new leaf, become a different player. He's not someone who found the fountain of youth or whatever. I think it's just that Tucson seems to know how to utilize him better than they have before. They've figured out that Carcone Island is the thing, and he's going to go there and score goals. He also loves shooting the puck. 96 shots on goal, which is second in the league, in between our good friend Riley Barber, who's number 1, and Sheldon Rempel, who's number 3. And those are 2 other guys who we know love to have the puck. The next guy down on Tucson is significantly further down. Laurent Dauphin has 80 shots on goal. So there's a big gap there. If your whole strategy as a team, particularly on the power play, is get Michael Carcone the puck, well, you could do a whole lot worse than that. Clearly, he's making that happen. And the power play is really just okay right now, if less than okay, maybe. Net power play, 15% for 22nd in the league. Traditionally, the team does a lot better on the power play. Last year, they finished 7th in the league with 20.5%. Fun fact, they were one of 3 teams to finish in the top 10 in terms of power play and not make the playoffs. The other 2 were the Marlies and the Barracuda. So, that's a fun statistic there. All of that is despite being shorthanded fairly often, 115 times for 7th in the league. So imagine a Tucson Roadrunners where the power play worked better and Michael Carcone scored more, because he's really the only one doing anything on the power play, like, then they wouldn't be in that weird, mushy middle part of the division. They'd be, up there with the ones that we know, like we've talked about previously, who we know are just sort of running away with those top 2-3 spots. Their PDO is high, all situations at 101.44, estimated PDO at 103.39. So they definitely are like overperforming, which doesn't say much for like the rest of their season. It's a team that continues to outperform their expectations in a way that isn't really going to last the rest of the season. Their upcoming schedule, they've got 2 more games against San Diego, which I feel like you could probably just pencil in as wins for the Roadrunners, given what we're going to talk about with San Diego later. They've got 2 against Texas. Texas, as we talked about, one of the only teams here that is actually doing anything good. And then they start the new year out with Colorado and Milwaukee, 2 teams that are very good. So those games are going to be tests for the Roadrunners to see how much of the success is just luck, how much of it is playing against bad teams a lot, the San Diego Gulls, and how much of it is actually legitimate. I think it's a lot of luck right now.
Glad you said that. This is their rolling PDO graph. It looks like that.
That's
Yeah. That's the fact that they've been getting that good of puck luck the entire season and only have 6th place, 5th place in the division to show for it. That's not great. That's not great, folks. Yeah, like that is going to come down eventually. Holy crap. That is quite the bender.
Yeah. So they're trying.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to put off the inevitable here because I know what comes next.
Yeah. Can I
Go ahead,
go into
Sarah.
it? All right. Well, it has been a while since we checked in with the Gulls. The last time was November 3rd. Since then, they've won 3 games. 3. Just 3. They have gone 3-15 in that span. We were fairly high on the Gulls coming into the season. We both took the over on 83 standings points and figured them to be easily in the mix for the playoffs. They have now lost 11 games in a row. They look absolutely hapless. However, they are 8th in starting roster games lost, 9th in value lost from those games. They're all situations. PDO is 97. That makes them 31st in the AHL. Their rolling PDO is 90.26, 4th lowest of any team at any time this season. I really hope you're going to show the chart of this because it's offensive. Is this run by the Gulls, this 11-game horror show, one that you chalk up to injuries and bad luck, or is there more going on here?
All right, first of all, let's show the graph here because if nothing, we're going to be sadists. This is their rolling PDO graph. Like they hit one of the big high points here. That was November 22nd. And then just like, I don't think there's
bad
a drop that's that just straight down. Like that's
unbelievable.
It really is. Now, to answer your question, I'm just going to preface this by saying, Gulls fans, if you would like to check out at this point, I completely understand. It's not going to be pretty, and we're going to have to say some bad things about your team. And you guys are a great fan base. You deserve better than this. So if you don't want to hear me go off on the Gulls right now, I understand. If you, however, are a sadist and want to hear what's wrong, I'll give you, we'll say a couple seconds here to make up your mind.
Yeah. I've loved every Gulls game I've gone to in San Diego.
They're
great
so,
people, great fan base. I'm so sorry about what's happening to you right now.
But yeah, to answer your question, this is not one I just chalk up to injuries and bad luck. There is more going on here. And yes, they've gotten unlucky. They're getting smashed by call-ups and injuries. The biggest one is Lucas Dostal. Because my God, has their goaltending been terrible without him. And that's because their defense has been bad without him. And they definitely miss guys like DeLeo and Gaudin and probably even Ole Uelevi, a sentence not too many people thought, or not too many former Utica Comets fans would have ever thought another team would say. But their roster hasn't been overwhelmed by ECHLers either. I count 4 from their last roster of the last game they played, that 9-4 shellacking. Osipov, Hilderman, Manella, and Metcalf. 2 of those being goaltenders definitely hurts, but like they still have AHL caliber players, albeit barely, up and down the lineup. They should not be this bad. And yet here we are. And to me, a lot of that comes down to coaching. And I really don't want to do this for what feels like the 30th time on this show. But I'd love for someone to come and tell me where I'm being ridiculous here. Watching the Gulls play, it's hard to identify not just what the structure is that they're playing in, it's hard to identify if there's a structure, because the Gulls, an alarming percentage of the time, lack any semblance of structure in all 3 zones on a regular basis. Like, there are moments when I was watching, I think I sent you a couple clips there. I'm just like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what are all of you doing here? Like, not just one player's kind of, screwing up a coverage. It's like 4 of 5 are doing their own thing of their own free will. And it's been painful to watch, to be honest. I mean, in transition, breakouts are often glassing out. When they do get possession in the neutral zone, it's almost exclusively dump and chase. The forechecking is often very ineffective because the second and third forwards are just miscommunicating. They're not sealing off their assigned areas. When you're not leaving the defensive zone with possession, you're not gaining the offensive zone with possession. Offense is incredibly hard to make, even at the AHL level. And when they do get odd man rushes or breakaways, a lot of them feel like it's a good bounce or an individual effort, or as opposed to the Gulls attacking a mistake. They'll get an odd man rush or a breakaway from a shot block at the point in the defensive zone, and the puck goes in the neutral zone, and they're off to the races. Or it's someone gets a good stick on a poke check, and it's a 2-on-1 the other way. Those are good individual efforts, but it's never a fast transition during a bad line change, or a winger reading the play correctly and his defenseman reading it with him. It seems like if they're going to make a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 or a breakaway, it's not something that requires coordinated teamwork or good passing or hockey IQ across multiple individuals. And while good individual efforts and odd man rushes to create odd man rushes, obviously that's a valuable skill. You want players that can do that, but it's concerning that the Gulls seem almost incapable of pouncing on mistakes to generate those chances if it means 2 or more teammates figuring it out and being on the same page together. And that's what I mean by it looks like there's no structure. Because when you have structure, guys know where they're supposed to be. Even if they don't always execute their assigned, assignment, they're at least understanding of where it's supposed to be or what they did wrong. Whereas a lot of these cases, everyone looks like they're out doing their own thing and don't know where their teammates are or what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, on the cycle in the offensive zone, 2 big problems I see. Number 1 is that there's rarely support on the puck. The Gulls will work the cycle low in the zone, and the forwards and defensemen away from the puck just kind of hang out. The Gulls puck carrier will get pinned in the wall, be under pressure, and like no one is moving to support him or give him an easy outlet so they can keep the cycle going and keep attacking. It's just like, oh, the puck moved to the corner. Now I got to go run and get it. And then everyone else just kind of watches and waits for you to do something, and then they react to that instead of being proactive. That's another part of just not playing with structure. And the other part of it is, the other is the only coordinated efforts in the offensive zone. Like their only offensive game plan seems to be point shots with traffic. The Gulls seem to rarely generate shots from the home plate area that aren't rebounds, deflections, tips, all from point shots. And as we've said on this show ad nauseum, you're not going to create offense consistently in that way if your entire offensive scheme is shots from distance plus traffic in front. A, that's a lazy way to scheme offense. B, it's not an effective way to scheme offense. And C, it's very easy to defend very effectively without, having to have great players in front of you. These are low percentage plays, and shockingly, they haven't generated a lot of offense in San Diego. And that's going back to the lack of structure that should be what the coaching staff implements. The defensive zone, also a disaster. The Gulls play man-to-man, which is common. If you've listened to our shows that are not about your team, you've heard us break down man-to-man and defensive zone structures, and almost every team plays some sort of man-to-man coverage. But the Gulls seem like they play man-to-man coverage everywhere. Like once the puck crosses the blue line, you pick a guy, that's your guy. And most teams stop playing man-to-man coverage against low cycles. They'll try and force 2-on-1s below the goal line in order to break up the play, because when the puck is down that far, you can kind of leave the far side defenseman as an option because they can't make a pass through two guys. The Gulls don't, though. I haven't seen a lot of evidence that they use what's called a 5-tight scheme, and we've talked about it a couple times on the show, to stop the cycle down low. It still looks very much like they're playing man-to-man, but the problem is the Gulls players in the defensive zone have terrible defensive habits. Guys either not looking over their shoulder, getting sucked into the play and chasing the puck carrier and chasing the play around, which you've seen a lot of, where there's 2 and 3 guys or 4 guys all watching the puck carrier and kind of floating with him, but not actually putting pressure on him and just leaving their designated area or their designated man. In some cases, too, you'll see guys that are looking over their shoulder and they see a guy wide open behind them. They're like, nah, I can totally make this play. Briard. Oh, my God, Briard. Briard. Like, he should go back to forward. I'll be honest. He can move the puck well. He's good in the offensive zone. But, wow, defensively, has he fallen off a cliff this year? On special teams, it's not any better. The PK is incredibly passive in the zone, where they're just literally standing, all 4 of them inside the face-off dots, just letting the other team work. They're not trying to pressure them at all. The forecheck doesn't even slow them down. Their opposing power plays gain the zone on the goals penalty kill like 80+% of the time. That's not acceptable. The power play looks like it's trying to use a 1-3-1, but rarely makes efforts to get shots from inside or utilize rural road one-timers. Instead, it's, spoiler, a lot of shots from outside with little puck movement to set it up and maybe a guy in front for traffic. Shocker, hasn't worked well. What makes that worse on top of all of this is listening to Roy Sommer at these post-game media availabilities, which I usually do not bother doing because coaches and players rarely say anything of value. It's a lot of get pucks in deep, give 110% kind of answers 99% of the time. Occasionally, someone will ask a fun question like Sarah in the Calder Cup finals last year and, get actual good quotes and possibly a fine out of it. But most of the time, they're not good questions. But Sommer, in the midst of an 11-game losing streak where they've been within 2 goals of winning just one time in the month of December, and post-game, he's very casual about it. It's like, oh, we're just not finishing our good chances. We have some positives to take away from tonight. We took some bad penalties. Maybe didn't start off bad night here or there, and you're still, winning 4 out of 6 or something like that, or, losing in overtime. Sure, fine. That's standard coach quote at the end of a game you lost. It's been 11 games, and there does not seem to be a sense of urgency from him at all. No accepting the blame that, he needs to be better. He needs to have the team ready to go at puck drop. He needs to make better adjustments. Those are not the words we're hearing here. Not even like a mild level of anger. On a 0 to 10 anger scale, he's chalking in at like a 1.5. You've lost 11 games in a row, and you're like, yeah, we'll get them next time. That's... At the end of the day here, this team is missing important pieces, especially in net, as Dostal was propping them up, whereas OEE and their ECHL goalies are just getting sniped night in and night out, even when the defense isn't setting them up for failure. But they regularly play without structure in all 3 zones. The structure they do seem to have in place is either ineffective or outdated. And they weren't really doing well before Anaheim snatched guys and injuries happened. So it's hard to believe that when DeLeo, Dostal come back, it's going to get much better. Mm-hmm. The other problem is firing Sommer means replacing him with whom? Both assistant coaches have resumes that are incredibly light for an AHL head coach. They're kind of light for an AHL assistant coach, to be honest. No one's leaving a prominent job in the CHL, Europe, etc. mid-season to take this job. And there are not too many names out there who are currently not coaching that, would make sense. I can't see Barry Trotz taking this offer. Joel Bouchard, obviously not getting the nod. Newell Brown, maybe, but that seems unlikely. I do think getting Michael Del Zotto will help a little bit. He can move the puck in transition. He can make offense happen. He's quarterbacked a power play effectively in the AHL recently. But he also has quite a lot of rumor about what kind of teammate he is off the ice. We talked about that a little bit before. And while substantiating that is almost an likely impossible task, you don't hear about guys being bad in the locker room basically ever. And for anything to leak out, especially as often as it has in Michael Del Zotto's tenure as a professional hockey player, sure seems like there might be something to it. So is he the answer? I'll at least give the Gulls management credit that they're out there at least trying. They brought in David Cotton. They're bringing in Michael Del Zotto. They're trying to find something. But to sum it all up here, it's bad. Nearly every aspect of this team is in a bad place. And while injuries and call-ups are very definitely putting their thumb on the scale, I don't expect a whole lot of improvement when they do get their guys back on the ice. The Gulls have one of the best fan bases in the AHL, and I think that's pretty unquestioned at this point. And they deserve better than this. But that's not how sports fandom works. You don't get what you deserve. You just get what you get. And unfortunately, right now, that seems like what this season is going to be. Another one where it's just not what you were hoping for.
No. When you were talking about Roy Sommer and his 1.5 on the anger scale, not to bring it back to the Wolves, but they like I said, they have won 2 games consecutively twice this season. And talking with Brock Sheehan after games, I'm like, oh, I have to. He's gonna hate me. He's gonna be so mad. But when I talk with him, the frustration, the anger, him taking responsibility for, I know that I need to be better to help these guys succeed. He's saying the things that you want to hear from a coach of a team that's struggling. And so to hear that the Gulls coach is just sort of pucks in deep, is really extra disappointing to hear. Because I see what it's like on the other side of, any Wolves fan who is Brock Sheehan needs to be fired. You don't see how much this guy wants to win. He was so excited when I got to talk to him after they won a game the other day, and I was like, it's nice to talk to you after a win. He's like, yeah. But seeing the coach take that responsibility and have answers for, yes, we need to be better in X, Y, Z, is what you want to see. And so that's extra disappointing for the Gulls fan base and for the team to not have that public accountability. Maybe it's happening in the room, but there's nothing going out.
There should be someone, asking real questions at those. And that's one of the other reasons I don't go to them that often or watch them that often, is because most of the time there isn't. And it's even if it was going on in the room, even if Sommer was in the room and angry and frustrated about what's going to happen, he's either got the greatest poker face in the history of hockey coaches, which is, that could be true. Or he's just kind of well, we signed this 1-year agreement just to see, another year. And my plan was to retire after that. And, well, it's not going so great, so who cares?
Whatever,
I'm not saying that's definitely his mentality, but if he's angry and frustrated, the opposite is bleeding through. And that's not good. To see a little bit of something from him in these interviews would be important, I think. If nothing else, to send a message to the rest of your team that what you did is not okay here. But to have we took, I think there were some positive things we can build on in a 9-4 loss. I mean, sure, if you squint real hard at 10 seconds worth of play here and there, you can find some positives. But my God, you were getting torched 6-1. You were never within 2 goals of this game being close. And you fought hard in the second period and stuff, but don't. That was not the moment for that speech.
No.
No. All right, Sarah. Any closing thoughts before we get to start bench ship?
I'm sorry, Gulls. Your life is hard.
Yeah, at least look at it this way. It's hard right now, and you go outside, and it's San Diego.
Yeah.
You could be, a fan of a team where right now you go outside and it's Siberia.
Yeah.
So at least you got that going for you, which is nice. All right, let's get to start bench ship here. Sarah, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. let's kick it off here. Start bench ship. Best goalie so far this season. We have Lucas Dostal, Dustin Wolf, and Dustin Tokarski. 2 Dustins and a Lucas. Sarah, who you got?
Well, we just spent all this time talking about the Gulls and how much things are worse without Dostal, since he has now been called up to service in the NHL, which, by the way, like, he has gotten the Ducks regulation wins, which is something they had hardly done this season before he got called up. So I'm starting him. Even prior to the season, I've seen a lot of the Gulls in Covering the Rain, and have always been really impressed with him. I think that he's probably the goalie of the future for the Ducks. And you see how dire things are without him, even worse than they were before. The Dustins is just a coin flip. Like, they're both so good. I'm going to bench Dustin Tokarski, and I'm shipping Dustin Wolf. And the only reason I'm shipping Dustin Wolf is because the Reign are playing the Calgary Wranglers right now, and they keep losing to Dustin Wolf, and I would like that to not happen. So I'm shipping him so I don't have to deal with it.
All right. I am also going to start Lucas Dostal here for one simple reason. You put any other goaltender in that environment, and they have sub 880 save percentage. Lucas Dostal, when he left, had like a 914, and he carried the Gulls kicking and screaming to wins in some of those games. Like, the only reason they were even somewhat respectable while he was there was because of him. And while Tokarski and Wolf have both played very well, the environment that they play in is much, much friendlier. I am going to bench Dustin Tokarski and ship Dustin Wolf for different reasons. Number one, I'm shipping Wolf because both him and Tokarski have pretty good teams in front of them, but Wolf's scores. Like, they have the number 1 offense in the AHL by goals per game. They score. So if he screws up once or twice a game, it's okay. The Penguins don't score that much. They're every once in a while they'll, put up an 8-ball on some poor bastard team. But like, by and large, they're middle of the pack or worse in goals for per game, which means if you're Dustin Tokarski, you have a better defensive system in front of you, better defensive players. But no matter what happens, you still have to go out there and stop 32 shots a night. And if you let one in, that may be it, because your team is not exactly the most offensively proficient one, and that matters. Whereas like Lucas Dostal, screws up twice a game, and they still were never going to win anyway.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Next up, former AHL team logos that I did not choose for their effectiveness. So we're going with bad former AHL team logos. These are 3 teams all from the early to mid 70s that existed. The Montreal Voyageurs, the Richmond Robins, and the Buffalo Bisons. I will kick us off here. I'm going to start the Richmond Robins, even though their logo looks like evil Red Robin, strictly because it's at least semi-passable as a hockey team logo. Like, these are all from the same era. Like, I think the Voyagers were like 71. The Robins were like mid 70s. The Buffalo Bisons were like late 60s to mid 70s. So these all existed around the same, art design capabilities. And the Robins at least have the most passable one there. I'm going to bench the Bison because it literally looks like a Pepsi ad that they just wiped the Pepsi part off of and put Buffalo Hockey Club, not even Buffalo Bisons or the standard Buffalo sports logo of some kind of bison-y thing. Just straight bottle cap. Okay. And that's only getting the nod because the Montreal Voyagers looks like a 4th grade art project. Like, that straight up looks like something I could recreate perfectly after 2 shots of tequila and Microsoft Paint. Like, that is... I had to explain to Sarah when she first saw it.
Yes.
Is that a fish trying to eat them? I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a canoe. Why is the guy in the back canoeing the V instead of visibly being in the canoe? Who knows? But these are... all right, Sarah, what do you got?
All right, so I am starting the Richmond Robins also, specifically because it looks like an evil Red Robin. Like, the logo is hilarious. I would buy a shirt with that logo. Like I'm going to Google to find a Richmond Robins jersey and like overpay for it or something because it's hilarious.
I love how there's two fonts to it too. Like Richmond and Robins are not even
right. It's like they started it and then set it down and then came back to it later and then forgot what they were doing. I love it. It's like what is like chaotic evil is this logo, and I am into it. I am benching Montreal largely because we had to have that discussion of what the hell is happening in this logo. I love the fact that it looks like a fish is eating those men. I'm benching it until it figures out what it wants to be. I'm shipping the Buffalo Bisons because that is just a do not call the copyright enforcement people on us on our fake Pepsi cover. That said, I would buy that as a shirt. So I'm shipping it to the ECHL. So maybe it would not cost $50 like shirts do anywhere else.
At least with like the Voyagers logo, like if you gave me 100 guesses, I could probably eventually come up with Voyagers. Obviously, if you took away the Richmond Robins like word thing, I might eventually get there.
Yeah,
you could give me 1,000 guesses at that Buffalo logo. I would never get Bisons.
The ever. Buffalo Pepsis.
I would have given them the Buffalo sodas, the Buffalo cappers, the Buffalo bottlers.
Yeah.
What? Why? Like, was the logo? Did you not have the team name before you made the logo?
Potentially, they ran out of time. So someone changed the assignment at the last second, and they were like, "Screw it."
Bad news, Bob. Pepsi actually pulled as an advertiser, so we can't use their logo. Oh, yes, we can. All right. Third one here. We'll call it Holiday Things.
Yes.
SantaCon, Festivus, or Secret Santa. Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You're going first. Start bench ship.
All right. We're starting Festivus because who can't go with a good airing your grievances? I mean, I will air my grievances 365 days a year, but like a day dedicated to being cranky about stuff, A+. I'm benching Secret Santa because the goodness of Secret Santa really depends on who you're doing it with. I have a group of friends that does a Secret Santa, and every year I get something amazing because they're all people who are good and thoughtful at gift giving. But sometimes you do a Secret Santa at your office and you wind up with like someone's half-burned candle and like a pair of mittens for a child, and you're not a child. So Secret Santa's getting benched because like it has the potential to go wrong. If I could ship SantaCon further than the ECHL, like if I could ship it to the moon, like what is the lowest possible like the federal hockey, like
that's not a real hockey league.
No, but like I want to.
That's a real league. I will not establish that.
I want to ship it as far away. Like also, it would totally fit in one of those leagues where like the main draw is that there's 17 line brawls a night. Like I don't even live in New York. I want to be as far, like SantaCon needs to be as far away as humanly possible. Chicago has its own equivalent of this stupid thing called T-Box, which is basically, it's like 12 bars of Christmas, only it's turned into like 35 bars. And it's all these like drunk 20-somethings in ugly sweaters roaming. Like I accidentally had to go out the day of T-Box and I like wanted to die. Like,
it's not like a phobia of Santa. It's like the giant crowds that are drunk.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's just the like thousands of angry drunk people. I get that at sporting events. I don't need that anywhere else.
That's fair. I was going to say, I don't know how you've been to sporting events all the year. That's pretty much what sporting event.
Yeah.
All right. So I am clearly starting Festivus. Despite the fact that, spoiler, I actually don't think Seinfeld is that good. I'm not a big fan. But airing of grievances is basically what this podcast is. So that, and I'm also not a Christmas person. So like an alternative holiday for those of us who are just kind of angry, that's my game. I am benching SantaCon. I was actually in New York City while it was happening. And it wasn't like, I guess we were in a different part of Manhattan because like we saw people, but it wasn't like an obnoxious amount of people. Not to mention too, like I think it's silly, but could you convince me like, hey, Sean, put on this goofy costume and drink with us all day? Yeah, I don't need more details than that. That sounds great. Like I've gone to not exactly this event, but similar ones that are put on a goofy costume and run around the city on a bar tour. Yep, I've done that in several different variations. Why not Santa? I am shipping Secret Santa. It's like, unless you were doing it with like your 5 bestest friends that anyone could ever have, Secret Santa is a display in contradictions. Santa's about giving, Secret's about withholding. Like, it is the opportunity for you to display just how uncomfortably little you know about someone else that you work with or are loosely related to. Like, I'm an excellent gift giver, but other people suck at it. And I also am the kind of person where, like, I don't give Christmas gifts to that many people because I have a very simple policy. It's, if I don't know something that I could get you for $25, $30, whatever dollars that you would enjoy, like an actual item, not a gift card or like some kind of catch-all thing, like an actual gift personalized to you that you would enjoy, you cannot possibly be that important to me. So I shouldn't get you anything because you're not that important to me. And I'm okay accepting that about people who maybe should be a little more important to me, but aren't. Like, so Secret Santa, no. Bye, Felicia. SantaCon, I could see me doing. Festivus, as I said, complaining about stuff and airing grievances is basically this podcast. So, all right. Any closing remarks?
I love it. I got to go wrap my Secret Santa gifts after this.
Oh, all right then. Sarah, kick off the outro. Let's go.
Well, that is it for us today. We're done making fun of the Gulls and all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching and or listening to the show. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. It's not really that useful to hear our Christmas ramblings when it's Easter. Not helpful. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. Also, if you're a YouTube listener, you can go to Spotify and Apple. It's the exact same show. You just can't see me, which my wife would consider a benefit. But you can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
All right, so my name is Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. It's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing over at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. Both those are personal accounts. There's some hockey things on my Twitter, say about 80%. My Instagram is just random musings about the world around me, which is almost always my dog Parker. You can find my stats work, all of the graphs that you may or may not have seen on this episode, as well as from Twitter or Facebook or any of those, at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. That is it. Thank you for tuning into the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien, and please dump and chase responsibly.